Hey guys, welcome to this week's how-to video. This week I'm going to be showing you how to make bushes for your gaming table. You will need 3 brushes, one a large scenery painting brush, for painting bases in the air, 2 basic dry brush, and 3 an old knackered brush, ideally a cheap one that you're prepared to let get wrecked for applying your PVA. You'll of course require some PVA glue. I'm using Evo Stick wood adhesive, mainly because it's a tacky PVA glue with quite a strong finish. You'll need some super glue, some sort of hole making device. I'm going to be using a pin vise. I have got an electric drill that I use for a lot of my stuff, but this is a little more delicate, so I'm going to do it by hand. Some basing sand, although this is just sand I found on the beach on account of the fact I live on an island and I'm not paying for something that literally surrounds my entire home. You also need some paints. This is to do a soil effect with. I've chosen Army Painter's Oak Brown and Monster Brown. And you'll need a base of some variety on which to mount the bushes. I'm using old GW base, which was part of a set of models that I mounted on something else. So it left me the bases spare. If you're using resin bases, it's a great reason to keep your old plastic bases. If not, you can buy plastic bases or MDF bases from a lot of places. My personal favourite is a company called Troll Trader, just because they've got massive laser cutters, but they do big bags of bases that you can just do what you like with. I just have run out at the moment. And also, you'll need some kind of foliage. Again, you can pick these up at most cheap shops, a lot of craft shops, even some florists. These are fake plastic plants, so they're going to be good for making stuff out of. First thing you're going to want to do is prep your base. The reason you want sand on the base is because it will make the join between the plants and the base seem more natural and seem more realistic. So you just want to cover the base like this. It doesn't want to be too thick. If it's too thick, it'll take forever to dry, and often it won't end up being as strong. I tend to keep the edges of the base clean, but that's just because I'm weird. You can paint the whole base around the edges, or you can just leave them clean. It's entirely up to you. And then what you do is you just get your sand, and you've got 2 options. You can sprinkle your sand over the base, or you can just drop your base in the sand. Boom, 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 boom. Neither of them makes much of a difference. Sorry, I'm just taking the sand off the edge because I find it just comes off the edge anyway. But that'll give you a sanded base. You want to leave that about 10-15 minutes until it dries solid, depending on how humid your house is. When it dries solid, the whiteness will go away and it'll be a bit more transparent, like this one that I prepared earlier. With this one, again, the next step, again, fairly simple. All these steps are simple. A lot of this stuff is really simple. You just get your base colour. Just get some sort of big brush like this, and then just cover the base in brown. You couldn't really get simpler than that. It's perfectly acceptable to use a base coat spray. You can use an airbrush. I wouldn't recommend it because every layer that you make this thicker will actually make the base a little more robust and hold the sand on a little bit better. So hand brushing is actually preferable at this point. And as you can see, I've got a nice thick coat on there, and that will dry, and when it does, it'll also aid in holding the sand on. I'm going to give that a few minutes to dry, and again, here's one I prepared earlier. Can you see a theme? You notice that when it dries, it is a little bit darker than when it's wet, but that's cool. If you want to make it look a bit more funky, you can add a bit of green stuff to it. I'm going to keep this nice and simple. I'm just going to dry brush it with a lighter colour to give it kind of the look of earth. So I'm just going to take my dry brush here and put it in the paint. I'm just going to dry brush it off. A lot of people will use, you know, an old toilet roll or some tissue paper. I tend to use the back of my hand a lot, which when I'm painting brown here, God knows what other people think I've got on the back of my hand. And then you just want to dry brush the whole thing. It doesn't have to be a particularly good dry brush. It can have streaks and lines in it more than your other dry brushes could. On account of the fact it's earth, and earth can be mucked up and anything. What I tend to do is do a quick base coat, and then I'll start from the center and brush out, and as you can see, that gives me a nice effect that doesn't appear too streaky. And then it needs a little on the outside, so I'm just going to go around the outside of it as well. I've got another one here that I'm going to do, and I'm going to try and do a couple of different places to give you ideas. But also you can just lather it on thick like this, and as you can see, it will still look good. And it doesn't matter if you get a more smooth effect like this or a lumpy effect like this. Either's good, because you're going to stick stuff in it anyway. Now at this point, you want to drill through it. Now I'd recommend getting something to drill on so you don't wreck your table. I'm using a bunch of leaflets that I picked up at my local vets last time I was down there. And you just press pressure on it. Now what I'd recommend is doing it in a rough circle. I'm just going to do 5 points on this, but if you want your bushes to look thicker, you can do more. If you want them to look thinner and scragglier, you can do less. It really is quite simple. And then I'm going to do a couple in the centre because I want this bush to be quite bushy. What the hell was that? I have no idea what just popped off there. It wasn't the end of the drill. This must have just unscrewed. It's the only thing I find about these things, sometimes when you press on them, if you screw in the wrong way, they'll unscrew themselves. Now, what I'm going to do with this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm actually going to do 2 layers to make it look a bit more like a natural plant. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to strip some of these down just to give myself a bit more edge, and then I'm a bit more stem to work with. Then I'm just going to pop this end off here. Now this, I managed to Drill through one of the harder bits, so that's great. I'm going to actually enlarge these holes slightly. I've just realised I've made them a bit small. I'm so alone, boom, 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 boom. Don't have nobody to call my own. I was going for this. Ideally, the smaller hole, the better. It makes it a bit tighter and holds it in a bit more, but those are a little larger and thicker than I was anticipating. So I'm just going to enlarge those holes slightly just by using a larger drill bit. Now, if you're wondering where you get this from, it's called a pin vise. Most of your local gaming stores will do one. Army Painter's one is very good quality. GW's one is also very good quality. If you work with plastic, they're useful. If you work with metal, they're essential. And I'm just going to use that brush to get rid of some of those bits. Dum, 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 dum. Dum, 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 dum. The reason I've got one is because I play a game called Infinity by a Spanish company called Corvus Belli. If you haven't played it, I would thoroughly recommend it, but all the models are metal and amazing. One of the reasons a lot of people went for going with plastic was they said, oh yeah, you can do things with plastic you can't do with metal, and then Corvus Belli went and did all those things. Right, now, where did I put that thing? Boom, 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 boom. Now, just take this off. Swallow that out a bit more. Right. What you want to do at this point is just about towards the end of the stem, using a thumbnail or some similar object, you want to bend it slightly, and you'll see why in a moment. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it through. Oh, let's get these bits of plastic out of the way. It's also easy enough to use a dry brush just to get the bits of plastic, get any of the drill bits out of the way, any of the filings. I'm just going to push this through. And grab it. Now, when you bend it, and you will bend it, it will try and lean to go out straight. Which, with this, is what I want it to do because it's a pine frond. So you want to bend it there, and then with a bit of super glue. God, I'm bending this thing. Pop it through. Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to coat this super glue on the end there, poke that through, and then using my nail, I'm going to point it towards the middle so that it pushes the frond out. The reason I'm using my nail is because I'm too lazy to use anything else. Okay. Oh, it's going to be one of those instances where super glue takes an hour to dry. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to put the rest of them through, and then I'll glue it at the end because that will show you how best to do it. Sadly, the plastic on these isn't the kind of plastic where you can use plastic glue. So I shall glue it at the end. She yank that through. Now these bushes don't need to be particularly thick, so I'm not particularly worried about them. This is actually a fairly thin, straggly bush that I'm aiming for here. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Get in there. So if you can hear that spitting sound, that's just me actually biting the ends off the plants because it's quicker. Boom. That swearing in the background that you heard was my wife losing one of our cats outside. They do that a lot. It's almost as if they're some sort of outdoor creature. Nope. That noise you can hear in the background is my son Maximus. Sometimes you'll find that you get a bit of stuck on the end. God damn it. Trim them down, they're going down too short than I want. There you go, that's better. Boom, 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 boom. Because it's taken a while to glue, I'm just going to pause it while I glue it and then show you the finished product. But basically, you can see that what you get here is a thin bush, which is good for minor, which is good for minor line of sight blocking, minimal cover, or just to make your board look pretty good. Okay, I'm just going to pause the video while I actually glue this down because the glue doesn't want to play at the moment, unfortunately. It's an older packet of glue I'm using. So I'll be back with you in a few seconds. Sorry about that, guys. A little pause there while I had to glue that down. This is what's happened to the top of my super glue. That was what was causing me the problem. I invite you to look at my thumbs. They are thoroughly glued. Usually it's not that difficult. It's a lot easier. It's just the pack of super glue I grabbed appears to be 9 or 10 years old or something. But as you can see, you fold them out and glue them and you just get basically a bush. It's nothing complicated. It's nothing massively difficult. Also, you'll notice that there's a little bit of glue in there. Now that will dry off and not be a problem. But if you want, you can chuck some more sand on it and just cover it. But basically it looks like you've got a bush growing out of the ground, which can provide cover or just look pretty. Here's another one that I did. And frankly, they're basically very simple. Random product placement here. Not because I get any money for it, sadly enough, but just because it can be very useful. If you're having trouble gluing things with super glue, I use Army Painter Magic, which is a super acetate. Well, it's a super glue hardener. This one is acetone, I believe. But there are loads of them on the market. It will turn your super glue a bit white like that and funky, but frankly, no one sees the underside, so it doesn't matter. But as you see, 2 quick, 2 easy bushes. If you're using MDF bases, you can just, as I've done with some of these ones, actually cut the bushes short and just glue them solidly into the base. The only time you need to worry about bending them over like these ones is if you're trying to get it to lean a specific way or something like that, or you're using a thinner plastic base, which is what I happen to have to hand. Because the whole point of this is it's cheap. The plants that I showed you earlier cost £1.25, and I'll get a dozen of these from each. Yeah, as I say, I've left the base edges black, but that's because that's the way I like them. But you can totally just paint them and put sand on them and dry brush them as well. But these are gonna provide some undergrowth in that is going to be totally movable. I'll be able to put it down and take it out of the way, hide marines around it, use it to obscure or provide shrouding cover, or just provide line of sight blockers, depending on the game you're using. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope it was useful to some of you. But that is literally how easy it is to make bushes. It's not even complicated. You just literally glue them in, drill holes, and give them something to hold on to. And, you know, giving the base a nice quick texture will make it look much more like the plants are coming out of the ground, and quite happily hide any terminal point there. Okay, have a nice week, guys, and hopefully I'll see you for the next one. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.